President Trump comes to Texas to showcase high-tech jobs in America.
And I've been saying, do something in Texas, do something in Texas, and Tim came through. This is going to be great.
But there's a story behind the visit. We'll look at the balancing act between Apple and the Trump administration over trade policy. A health scare hits one of the most powerful people in Texas, how the experience could get lawmakers to take action. Governor Abbott named in a lawsuit over his own inauguration, why questions about the money behind the event are leading to legal action. Hello, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. Amid the backdrop of the impeachment inquiry, a potential government shutdown, and a trade war with China, President Trump made a quick trip to Austin on Wednesday. The president toured the Flex manufacturing facility in Northwest Austin. That's where workers make Apple's new Mac Pro computer. The president shook hands and spoke with workers on the production line. The visit was intended to highlight the fact that Apple is keeping jobs in America. Wednesday's visit was part of an ongoing dance between Apple and the Trump administration that dates back to the summer. On June 28th, as President Trump threatened more tariffs on Chinese goods, Apple announced it was moving production of the Mac Pro from Austin to China. Apple assembles the computer in Austin, but many of the parts come from China. Apple said Trump's tariffs would make it too expensive to continue assembling the Mac Pro in Austin. Weeks later, on July 18th, Apple applied for a waiver on those tariffs. Then on July 26th, Trump sent out a tweet saying Apple won't get the waiver and tells them to make those parts in the U.S. Then, on September 19th, Apple is granted the waiver, allowing them to continue importing parts from China without paying the tariff. 4 days later, they officially announced they would keep production of the Mac Pro in Austin. But the ongoing trade war with China could still lead to tariffs. That could hurt American companies like Apple and their workers. Our Phil Prazen spoke to the president and Apple CEO Tim Cook to get insight on what could happen next in the trade war.
With what you know now with this trip, the tariffs on December 15th, are they still going to go into effect? Because some of them still are on the Apple products, iPhone, iPads. Are they still going to take effect?
It depends on what happens with China if they make a deal. Right now, China wants to make the deal much more than I do. Our country is doing better than it's ever done. We're the largest economy in the world. And now by far, when I came in, China was going to overtake us very quickly. And it didn't work out that way. We've really expanded a lot and they've contracted. But we'll see what happens. We have a little ways to go. And we're taking in, it'll soon be hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, which we never did before. China never paid us 10 cents. And we're looking forward to it. I'm glad to be in Austin. I love this city, but I love Texas, the state of Texas. We have had great success in Texas, as you know.
You've heard this argument before about with tariffs that it could raise the prices on some products, but in the effort to encourage jobs in America, you're okay with that deal?
Well, we have the best unemployment numbers and employment numbers that we've ever had in our country, in the history of our country. African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, women. Now it's the best in 71 years for women. We have the best unemployment numbers we've ever had. And so nobody can tell me about that. I will say this, the tariffs are being eaten by China because they've devalued their currency in order that we don't have to pay, because otherwise they're going to lose their supply chains, which they're already losing. And it's going very well for us. China wants to make a deal. We'll see if we make it. It's got to be a great deal for us. In the meantime, our numbers are the best they've ever been. This is Tim Cook, as you know, of Apple. And Tim is just saying to the media, to the other media, that the economy in the United States is the strongest in the world. So that's a great tribute. Why don't you ask Tim a question?
All right. Oh, so he said he's still thinking about the tariffs on the other products like the iPod, the iPad. Does that worry you at all?
Well, I hope that it doesn't come to pass, but it's the president's decision. But I'm thrilled to be in Austin. I'm thrilled to be opening this facility with these people that you've met throughout the course of the day. I was really happy this morning for the groundbreaking of our site. You know, we're building a 3 million square foot site. We came to Austin for the first time in '93, and we were a very small company then. And along with Austin, we've kind of grown in parallel with Austin, and we're thrilled to now take it to another level.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I can tell you that Apple, being one of the great companies of the world, I think the first $1 trillion company, and I've been saying, do something in Texas, do something in Texas, and Tim came through. This is going to be great. And then they're doing another big one in Texas, which is going to be $1 billion investment, and that's going to be starting very soon, so it's very exciting.
The manufacturing facility the president toured with Tim Cook is not new, and it's not an Apple facility. It's owned by Flex, and it's been operating in Northwest Austin for years. Apple did break ground on a new campus on Wednesday morning. It's also in Northwest Austin. The new campus will be Apple's largest outside its headquarters in California. Apple's recent announcements are bringing jobs to the Lone Star State. Some in the business community see that as an opportunity for Texas to shine on the international stage.
It demonstrates the value of government and corporations coming together to grow jobs and paychecks. There's really few things that government does that are as significant as having a stable, robust, solid economy and announcing new jobs, bringing jobs from offshore, onshore, putting capital into the economy. That's a big announcement.
Union leaders in Texas had a less rosy view of the president's visit. The Texas AFL-CIO co-hosted a workers' roundtable in Austin hours before the president's visit. Local politicians joined the workers. They say President Trump's approach to the economy leaves a lot of Texans behind.
You know, obviously we're excited about the growth of Apple or any company that brings good-paying manufacturing jobs to this community. That's important. What we think we're trying to say is that that is not the whole story of this economy, and that a photo op highlighting one corporate decision to bring jobs to this community doesn't outweigh the massive damage and wreckage that's occurring in other parts of this state and this country.
Federal workers also shared complaints that the Trump administration took away their collective bargaining rights. Electrical workers at the roundtable also called on lawmakers and the president to support apprenticeship programs to help people train for jobs. A life-threatening health scare has one of the most powerful men in Texas taking action. How Dan Patrick's new initiative could save lives in the Lone Star State. The top candidates debate in the Democratic presidential race without a Texan on stage.
We never get to truly address so many of the issues that matter.
But Julian Castro found a way to make a mark, and it could help him find a different path to the White House. The top Democrats in the race for president faced off Wednesday for a debate in Georgia. For the first time in this election cycle, there were no Texans on the debate stage. But the lone remaining candidate from Texas tried something different to get attention on debate night.
One of the frustrating things about these debates is that we never get to truly address so many of the issues that matter to the lives of Americans out there in our country.
Julian Castro did not qualify for Wednesday's debate, but during the debate, he tried to take part on social media. Castro posted answers to each question on Twitter. The effort did earn some attention. Castro became a trending topic on Twitter during the debate. His campaign also reported their best fundraising day in a month. Still, missing the debate stage does not bode well for Castro's presidential hopes, but there could be another way for him to reach the White House.
You know, I think the Castro campaign is pretty clearly not going to succeed at the presidential ballot. But I think he's a really strong contender in the Veep stakes. You know, when you finally get a Democratic presidential nominee and they begin looking around for who might be the number 2 on the ticket, Castro brings some things to the ticket. You know, in states like Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, having an Hispanic on the ticket could be a real plus.
Meanwhile, New York billionaire Michael Bloomberg is making a move to join the race for president. According to our news partners at the Texas Tribune, the former New York City mayor applied to get on the ballot for the Texas primary in March. Bloomberg also launched a $100 million campaign to run online ads against Donald Trump. The Texas inauguration set records for fundraising and for spending. But where did the money go? Some journalists are turning to the courts to get answers and naming the governor in their lawsuit. A health scare leads one of the most powerful people in Texas to take action.
God's given me extra years and days with my grandkids, and I'm going to make them count.
How his experience could get lawmakers to take steps to help your heart health. When President Trump arrived in Texas on Wednesday, one of the first people to greet him was Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. He and his Attorney General Ken Paxton welcomed the president, then joined him on the limo ride to the Mac Pro manufacturing facility. The moment on the tarmac comes just a few months after a serious health scare for the Lieutenant Governor. Now that experience could lead to changes in Texas. Wes Rappaport looks at how Patrick is leading a new effort to study heart health in Texas.
He's one of the most powerful people in the state. He sets the agenda of the Texas Senate and presides over the 31 senators. And while the legislature can deliver blood-boiling moments, it was Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's own bloodstream that nearly killed him.
I didn't have heart pain, but I had some discomfort. I was very fatigued. And so I got through the next 2 days, and I got home 2 days later. And I was sitting in my house, got up to take the dog out, and all of a sudden I had a pain in my jaw, my neck, and my shoulders, down my arms. And if you read about having a heart attack, those are the vital signs. And so I went to the emergency room, and my EKG was normal, and my blood tests were normal. And they kept me for several hours, and they took the test every 30 or 60 minutes. Everything was normal. Finally, the heart surgeon, who was on call, came in, and I was feeling okay. I mean, that pain was short, went away, and it came up a few times in the hospital, but they were kind of uncertain. And so he said, you know, if you're okay with staying overnight, let's keep you and give you an angiogram tomorrow, a cath, and check your arteries. And I had a 90% block in my widowmaker artery, which is your left artery, which supplies 50 to 60% of the blood to your heart. So I didn't have a heart attack, but I was right there and getting those symptoms. They put a stent in, and I'm better than ever. Because now I have 100% of blood flow instead of about 10% out of that artery. And so I feel great, and I'll live a normal life. And so I've become a little bit of an evangelist on this. And that's one of the reasons we have this charge in our interim charge to study this. And I don't want everyone rushing out to their doctor and saying, give me an angiogram. Just since this happened, I've had 2 friends die of a heart attack, one 63, one in his early 70s, who had passed their physicals and everything was fine. Because those regular tests don't always pick up the blockage. And so it's an invasive operation. So it's not something they just do because they could nick an artery or hurt your heart. I want to say to everyone watching, if you have chest discomfort, if you have that pain that I had, but if there are some other issues, and if you have family issues, I had my dad and mom both had a heart attack, and don't dismiss having the angiogram.
This is the most common cause of death and illness in the United States.
Dr. Angel Caldera of Baylor Scott & White says more Texans should educate themselves on heart health.
In this case, the coronary angiogram that the Lieutenant Governor had done is what is considered the gold standard for the diagnosis of coronary artery disease.
I didn't know I was walking around with a ticking time bomb.
What does that mean to you to know that you were this close from having a real serious problem?
I'm very thankful to doctors of modern medicine. You realize that you might not have survived. Thank the Lord for getting me at the right place at the right time, in the right hands, and the right doctors.
So you've asked the Health and Human Services Commission to look into this a little bit, and the charge specifically is focusing on costs associated with heart disease, and both short-term and long-term, of costs stemming from heart disease and strokes, and these healthcare programs in Texas. What do you hope comes out of those meetings and the reports that follow?
So what I hope comes out of this is awareness and a plan from the doctors across this state and the hospitals of how we can address this issue. Because again, they're just not going to do an angiogram unless you have a specific reason to do it. The whole purpose of interim hearings is to gather information. So we'll see what recommendations are made and what the cost would be involved. But it's interesting because when I was a senator and lieutenant governor, we've had issues. For example, we had high school students, a few in the state of Texas, who had a heart attack in the summer practices, and we now have protected the medical profession to do EKGs and some schools are doing that. And I said we need legislation on that because some were hesitant to do it because they may be sued after the fact. So those are the kinds of things you find out in the legislature is when there's a problem that exists, you find a possible solution, and sometimes it's legislation, sometimes it's just funding.
Looking ahead to 2020, what are your efforts looking like to guarantee a red Texas at the state and federal level? You know, we saw you and the governor and Speaker Bonin as this, promoting this united conservative front throughout the entire session. Yes. And now one of those three is not going to be there the next time. So what does this legislature look like, after 2020?
There will be a new speaker next session. Since the current speaker said he will not be running, he's not going to run for office again. And so we'll work with the new speaker. And the governor and I have a close relationship, and whomever they select, we'll work with them. Now, my goal is to be sure that's a Republican speaker, not a Democrat, because if there were to be a takeover of the House by the Democrats, we could find ourselves in the gridlock that Washington is in, and I don't want to see that happen. I'm honored the president asked me to chair his campaign again in Texas, as I did 4 years ago, and he's going to win Texas. John Cornyn's going to win, but we do have a fight for those House seats, and so I believe we're going to keep the House. I think we might even pick up a few seats. Some of the 12 the Democrats won, I don't think they can hold. And so I think we'll be fine. And I look forward to the next session. We had more cooperation between the House and Senate than we ever had under the former Speaker. The things that we accomplished, the governor and I tried to do, and the former Speaker blocked most of them. So we were able to get that done, and we'll work with the new Speaker.
As Patrick reflects on his health scare, he's hoping it can help others.
Look, I'm a person who always felt extremely healthy. I've had a few broken bones along the way, but I've been extremely healthy, and I feel great. And I felt good before until those couple of days. I had no idea that was going on, and so for me, I feel like it's a new lease on life. God's given me extra years and days with my grandkids, and I'm going to make them count.
The Lieutenant Governor's wife, Jan, is also getting involved. She's been named the co-chair of the American Heart Association's Go Red campaign in Texas. That's an effort that focuses on heart health for women. The Texas inauguration leads to a lawsuit, with the governor himself as a defendant.
We'd like to know where they spent that money. Was there, they say there was no self-dealing, but they just say trust us.
A closer look at questions over who paid for the inauguration and where the money went. The governor's inauguration set records for fundraising and for spending, but where did the money go? That's the question some journalists are trying to answer. Now they're turning to the courts to get the financial records and naming the governor in their lawsuit. Joining us now for Insight is Jay Root from our reporting partners at the Texas Tribune and attorney Bill Alshire. The governor's inauguration paid for with private donations, not tax dollars. Why does the inaugural committee have to share their financial records?
Well, it's in the law. My colleague Shannon Najmabadi and I got into this the way you typically do inaugural reporting. You talk about the donors, corporations can give, unlike during campaign season. They can't give directly to campaigns, but they can give to an inaugural. They get VIP access. So we sort of did that traditional story, but we noticed while we were doing that the law says they must maintain spending records, which we honestly were surprised about that. So we said, we'll have to ask when they put their final report in. And we asked, and we were really surprised what we found. Two main things. One, they're fighting us tooth and nail to keep every single receipt from us. And then the second thing we found is that the Abbott inaugurals, both of them, but in particular 2019, is a real outlier in terms of spending, not only in Texas, but nationally. We compared it to the state of Florida. We compared it to the Trump inaugural. And the fundraisers were gotten an extraordinary 19% of the money. We're told by fundraisers that's just off the charts. And
so is this just a matter of them interpreting the law a different way? I mean, how did we end up in a lawsuit?
Well, I think that a lot of people don't realize, as Jay said, that the government code actually creates this committee. The chairs and co-chairs get a proclamation from the Secretary of State designating them in their official capacity as chairs of the inaugural committee. The law is clear that they are a state agency. They had to keep records. They had to preserve those state records. They have to disclose them under the Texas Public Information Act. This is all clear in the law. This case is going to test the idea that state officials can get together and conceal records of how $5.3 million was spent by a public agency, regardless of whether it's public funds or not. It's spent by a public agency, a state agency, by simply making the state agency disappear, or at least go in hiding.
This really speaks to transparency, and I think it's admirable that the Texas Tribune wants to take this up as a journalism organization, but it goes beyond, you guys suing the committee. You've named the governor and the Secretary of State in the lawsuit also.
Well, one of the things that we discovered is that the people that form the inaugural committee, they're donors, they're close confidants or people who know the governor well, and he taps them. And then also his aides, his campaign finance director, or his campaign director actually became the executive director of the committee. And so, we found that the governor's office did have access to this information, and they were able to tell us, for example, they also spent $800,000 on charity. And why wouldn't you go out and say, hey, we gave money to some charitable organization and we're proud of that? They won't tell us what the names of the charitable organizations are. We'd like to know where they spent that money.
Well, we'll be paying close attention. We're glad you're doing this. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys being here.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.